The 2015 NFL season ended in a battle between the first and second overall picks of the 2011 NFL Draft. Cam Newton versus Von Miller, a play that defined two legacies and an entire season.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and it's still on the ground.
And most importantly, countless memes. Each one better than the last. Welcome to That's Good Sports. I'm Brandon Perna. Today we go balls deep into the 2015 NFL season. Cue the intro. Cue it. There. The hottest team in football that year? The Carolina Panthers. Despite losing wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin, fifth-year quarterback Cam Newton enjoyed one of the most dynamic seasons in NFL history. Over 3,800 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, 636 rushing yards, and just 10 picks. Superman was in peak form. Newton's rocket arm and punishing runs led the top-scoring offense and made him the easy choice for MVP, while the Panthers' defense, headlined by Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, and Josh Norman, finished sixth in scoring defense, giving Carolina a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. A perfect recipe for bowl. Super Bowl. Carolina battered opponents and didn't lose their first game until 2 days after Christmas. A one-score loss to the Atlanta Falcons. The greatest challengers to the Panthers in the NFC were in the desert, where Bruce Arians' no risk it, no biscuit offense resurrected the career of notorious Bengal hater Carson Palmer and turned the 13-year vet into an MVP candidate. Between Palmer, rookie running back David I hope the Texans never trade for me Johnson, and lockdown corner Patrick Peterson, the Cards put together the best season in franchise history, finishing 13-3 and securing the second seed in the NFC. They were so good that they managed to dethrone the Seattle Seahawks, who were coming off back-to-back NFC West titles and Super Bowl appearances. Now the Hawks took a slight dip coming off their horrific Super Bowl loss, Malcolm Butler, but still fielded the league's stingiest defense, allowing just 17.3 points per game. 2015 was the year their offensive line started to evolve into Swiss cheese, and Russ Wilson took 45 sacks, but still managed to put together a Pro Bowl campaign. The San Francisco 49ers took an even bigger slide under new head coach Jim Tomsula. Oh! Quite the downgrade in terms of gyms when you go from a Harbaugh to a Tomsula, but if you wanted a man to manage your local Italian restaurant, Tomsula was your guy.
I will have the gabagool.
Colin Kaepernick hadn't yet taken a knee, so people still liked him. Even these people, but Cap's numbers started to nosedive. For the 49ers, it didn't help that their defense was gutted by the sudden retirements of promising young linebacker Chris Borland and the all-pro, always glistening Patrick Willis. The 49ers finished 5-11, 2 games below the St. Louis Rams, who, for the very last time, were actually the St. Louis Rams, as team owner Stan Kroenke was planning to move them to Los Angeles in a perfectly legal fashion that would never result in a $790 million settlement to be paid to the city of St. Louis by the NFL. Before the season, the Rams swapped out former first overall pick Sam Bradford for Eagles quarterback Nick Foles. Yes, Foles was an Eagle, a Ram, and even a Chief before he went back to Philly and slayed the mighty dragon named Tom Brady-on. What's a good dragon name for Tom? Anyway, Nick Foles was not yet the big-dicked individual he would grow to become in 2017. In this season, he threw more picks than TDs, but the Rams benefited from Offensive Rookie of the Year running back Todd Gurley, who averaged nearly 5 yards per carry and helped Jeff Fisher to, you guessed it, a 7-9 record. One thing was clear, Todd Gurley's knee would never cause him any issues later. In Philadelphia, Sam Bradford didn't get the Chip Kelly bump that had elevated Nick Foles 2 seasons prior. Kelly was fired after 15 games, and oh fuck, Pat Shurmur stepped in to finish the job. Eagles fans didn't seem to notice the change from one form of incompetence to another. Pat Shurmur should have been put in jail then, so he could avoid cursing my Broncos 5 years later.
We did a drill today where we were actually trying to throw incompletions.
Now Philly finished 7-9, but in the bumbling NFC East, that was good enough for second place in the division. Sound familiar? Dallas was pretty much done for when Tony Romo broke his collarbone week 2. That injury essentially started the end of Tony Romo's career, as Dak Prescott would be drafted in the upcoming draft, and a preseason injury in 2016 gave Dak the chance to start, something he never let go of. Linebacker Thomas Davis of the Carolina Panthers actually finished off Romo in 2015, who returned week 11 after the collarbone injury and then played in his final NFL game on Thanksgiving, week 12. If you want to know how much sway Romo had, look no further than the betting line in this game. The 3-7 Cowboys were favored over the 10-0 Panthers, all because a banged-up Tony Romo was back on the field. Crazy, I know. Romo comes in, throws 3 picks, 2 of which were pick sixes in the first half, and a third quarter hit by Thomas Davis put Romo in the much safer and much more lucrative broadcast booth, where he'd be hailed as a psychic, because he knew how to read a defense. Hey, are you enjoying this episode? Please subscribe here, and if you really want to support this channel, check out my coffee company, BenchwarmerBrew.com. We've got coffee, we've got Tom Grossi's Tom's tea bags, we have mugs there, a whole bunch of shit you probably don't need, but if you like YouTubers and you want to support us, that's the way to do it. Now the Giants finished just 6-10 in the last year under the watchful eye of Tom Coughlin. The champions of the NFC East, they actually started 3-5. It looked like we might have a division winner with a losing record for the second time in history. Shout out to the 2010 Seahawks.
Run through a motherfucking face over and over again.
It was the Washington Commander football skins who were staring at a 3-6 record, trailing 24-0 to the Buccaneers on the road week 7. Suddenly something clicked and Kirk Cousins morphed almost instantly from a pedestrian QB to a Pro Bowler who would earn something like $1 billion over the next 7 seasons, all guaranteed. And he actually won Most Improved Player of the Year in 2012. Cousins crystallized the comeback with a hearty, "You like that? You like that?" Yes, sir. Okay, maybe having Sean McVay as your offensive coordinator helped a little bit. Pretty sad though that this is literally the best highlight from the football team in the last 10 years. A soundbite from their QB. Now the team they beat to kick off their hot streak, the Buccaneers, got a strong rookie season out of the #1 overall pick, famous Jameis Winston, but were unable to compete for a title in the NFC South, the division that ran through Carolina, the same way Jameis Winston ran through crab legs. Tampa did have the league's second leading rusher in Doug Martin, aka the Muscle Hamster. God, I love Doug Martin, and not just because he reminded me of my 2 favorite childhood shows, Doug and Martin. Damn! Because he was a human friggin' bowling ball coming out of the backfield. Now, Atlanta was still a year away under new head coach Dan Quinn and offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan, squandering a 6-1 start to finish 8-8, and the Saints helped out Drew Brees by trotting out the worst scoring defense in the league, although CJ Spiller's game-winning touchdown on the first play of overtime in Week 4 against the Cowboys, well, that was vintage Saints. As was Brees leading the league in passing yards and having nothing to show for it. In the AFC South, Andrew Luck wouldn't finish the season after facing the Denver Broncos, who pummeled him so brutally that he suffered a lacerated kidney, which sounds horrific, but at least he wasn't poked in the eye by the normally very calm and collected Aqib Talib in this game like Dwayne Allen. Talib would be suspended 1 game for 1 eye poke, and the Colts would actually go on to win that game. Probably the highlight of their season. Another way to sum up the Colts season was this all-time super effective special teams play.
What in the world? Flag is down.
That will be remembered for its effectiveness.
Illegal formation. The whole right side of the line was not on the line of scrimmage. Offense.
The second overall pick, quarterback Marcus Mariota, was showing some promise as a rookie. Not in the win column, but his year 1 to year 2 leap had many thinking he was going to be very good. I'm not going to spend any time discussing a division that Brian Hoyer clinched with a 9-7 record, but J.J. Watt earned Defensive Player of the Year honors for his third time in 4 seasons. This was the last time J.J. Watt would be healthy, and he'd lead the league in sacks at 17.5. Moving upwards on the map, the Green Bay Packers were finally dethroned as victors of the NFC North. Second-year QB Teddy Bridgewater was aided by the return of running back Adrian Peterson, who seems to play his best football after missing a season with an injury, and the emergence of rookie 5th-round wide receiver Stephon Diggs. While Packers wideout Devontae Adams suffered from a sophomore slump, dropping 10 passes that season, to the dismay of pissed-off Redditors everywhere who wanted him cut. Can you imagine? The Packers playing without Devontae Adams. While the Bears and Lions, in all too predictable fashion, brought it up the rear. The Vikings and Packers battled it out for the division on Sunday Night Football, and the Vikes captured the division on the road at Lambeau. An impressive feat. Similarly, the AFC North had a pair of top dogs battling for supremacy. The Ravens lost Joe Flacco to injury, and the Browns did get 2 wins out of Johnny Manziel, which is like getting an Oscar performance out of Steven Seagal.
Are you really as good as they all say you are?
Every once in a while.
But the Steelers and the Bengals jostled for the top spot. Even though Cincy lost red-hot quarterback Andy Dalton to a fractured thumb and were forced to turn to young QB A.J. McCarron, whose greatest highlight to that point was having a girlfriend that made Brett Musburger's eyes pop out of his fucking head.
What a beautiful woman.
Wow, AJ's doing some things right down in
So if you're a youngster in Alabama, start getting the football out and throw it around the backyard with Pop.
Andy Dalton, believe it or not, was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL in 2015, finishing with the passer rating at 106, second only to Russell Wilson that season. But he was also emasculated by Defensive Player of the Year J.J. Watt after a Monday Night Football loss to the Texans.
Our goal was to come out here and make the Red Rifle look like a Red Ryder BB gun, and I think we did that.
Wow.
That pretty lame insult, to be honest, but Dalton whined so much after the fact that I could no longer respect him.
I'm disappointed in him for the integrity of this game.
A true battle of emotional lightweights. Now, A.J. McCarron led the Bengals to a 2-1 finish, leaning on the dynamic duo of Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard and taking advantage of breakout star Tyler Eifert, who led the team with 13 touchdown grabs. The Steelers started their season with a loss in New England.
Every team that I know of has some story about what happens to them in this stadium.
Head coach Mike Tomlin didn't think it was just a coincidence that the coaches' headsets were experiencing some interference.
Listening to the Patriots radio broadcast for the majority of the first half on our headsets.
Communication?
That's always the case.
Here?
Yes.
Saying that every time you play here, you have radio.
I said what I said.
Something fishy with the equipment in Gillette Stadium? No way.
To me, those balls are perfect.
The Steelers also had to turn to multiple quarterbacks early in the season when Big Ben essentially looked like this every week. Mike Vick stepped up and led the Pittsburgh Steelers to an improbable win on Monday Night Football in San Diego as Le'Veon Bell ran for a game-sealing touchdown as time expired. Antonio Brown tied Julio Jones for most receptions this season with 136, and most importantly, 0 off-field issues. The Bengals prevailed though, finishing 2 wins ahead of the Steelers, but something tells me these two teams would meet again. Probably because Will and I wrote this episode and I know where it's going. Now, the Bengals won a Week 4 matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that had a nightmare start to the 2015 season. Andy Reid's squad was 1-5 to start the year, but with their backs against the wall, Alex Smith and comeback player of the year Eric Berry, who triumphantly kicked cancer square in the dick, and rookie of the year corner Marcus Peter couldn't miss, winning their last 10 games to finish 11-5. Their breakout star on offense, though, may have been third-year tight end Travis Kelce, who picked up over 800 yards and lifted a receiving core that was historically bad the season before, getting exactly 0 touchdowns from their wide receivers in 2014. But in their 10-game tear, the Chiefs swept the Chargers, who finished 4-12, and edged out the Raiders on 2 separate occasions. The Raiders, believe it or not, were not doormats. Second-year QB Derek Carr built a rapport with rookie wideout Amari Cooper, who appeared poised to retire a Raider. Latavius Murray cracked 1,000 yards on the ground, and the 39-year-old Charles Woodson capped off a Hall of Fame career with 5 interceptions and Pro Bowl honors. One of the best finishes to a career by a corner/safety. Now, the Raiders were just 7-9 in 2015, but they were clearly building something under head coach Jack Del Rio. Del Rio had been Denver's defensive coordinator for 3 seasons before joining the Raiders, and his expertise proved valuable in a Week 14 dust-up with the Broncos. Khalil Mack had 5 sacks of quarterback Brock Osweiler. That's right, 5 sacks. Wait, Brock Osweiler, you say? What the hell was he doing? Well, he was supposed to be on the sideline. But the Denver Broncos were an anomaly in 2015. Their point differential suggested a team that should have finished just slightly above 500. But to borrow from common Twitter parlance, they just had that dog in them. When I had my lungs x-rayed, the only dog the doctor found was carcinoma. If you know what kind of dog breed that is, please let me know in the comments. 2 years earlier, the Denver Broncos fielded the highest scoring offense to ever grace the National Football League. Just a couple years later, Peyton Manning's arm was less useful than Jamie Lannister's hand.
Your daddy ain't here.
And the Broncos had to rely on their star-studded defense known as the no-fly zone to pick up the slack. The no-fly zone may not have been the top-scoring defense, but they had a special knack for making the right play at the right time. Aqib Talib kicked off the season with the clutch pick 6 against the Ravens, winning that game. Linebacker Brandon Marshall and corner Bradley Roby beat the Chiefs in Week 2 with a scoop and score and one of the most improbable finishes since Tim Tebow, and the rest was history. This incredible unit forced 27 turnovers, with 5 of them going the other way for touchdowns. Up front, they boasted one of the best pass rushing duos on earth, known as the Orange Rush. 52 sacks on the season as Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware made opposing quarterbacks shit their pants and release faster than Deshaun. Never mind. They were good. Just know this unit was good. Denver was forced to compensate for a stagnant offense. Much like Gary Kubiak's testicles struggled to fit in these jeans, Peyton Manning struggled to mesh with his new head coach's offense. And aside from brief flashes, Manning was a shell of his former self in terms of physical ability, but his mind was still strong. Manning was benched in a record-setting game against the Chiefs in favor of Brock Osweiler. I don't even remember what all-time record Manning set in that game because it was literally his worst performance since his rookie year, and I thought I would never see him play again. It was a rough game to watch as a Broncos fan. Osweiler, despite never starting a game, steadied the ship for the Broncos and won 5 of his 7 starts to end the season. His greatest win came in a winter wonderland game against the undefeated New England Patriots on Sunday Night Football, which I was at. Osweiler twice came back from 14 points down with the ball in overtime. He looked at the defense, audibled to a run, and C.J. Andersonic did the rest. The Broncos stumbled a bit at the end of the season, but got a perfectly timed comeback from the Sheriff in Week 17. A win that sealed their destiny as AFC West champs and the top seed in the conference. The Broncos had like 4 turnovers in the first half of this game. None were really Osweiler's fault, but he was benched anyway, and for some reason it just worked perfectly as Manning handed the ball off on his way to victory. Peyton Manning essentially brought confidence to the team. His return was like how you sleep better at night when your dad is home. Is he gonna stop an armed intruder from brutally murdering you? Probably not, but you believe you're safer with him there. Now, as they so often did in that decade, the postseason kicked off in Houston, where a Brian Hoyer-led Texans team hosted those red-hot Chiefs. The Chiefs hadn't won a playoff game since the Bush administration. No, the first no more taxes Bush administration. But they made it clear on the opening kickoff that they were here to end that drought. The Chiefs defense forced 5 turnovers of Hoyer, a full Delhomme if you will, and Kansas City cruised to a 30-0 win. This is the game in my mind that made Bill O'Brien go insane and ultimately led to his slow demise. Later that night, we caught up with another team that hadn't won a playoff game since Cheers was still on TV. The Bengals led their rivals, the Steelers, by 1 point late in the fourth quarter. Linebacker Vontaze Burfict intercepted Landry Jones, who had replaced the injured Big Ben, and all the Bengals had to do was run out the clock. They did not do that.
The ball comes out! The Steelers pick it up! Are you kidding me?
Big Ben bravely returned for one final drive, and with under 30 seconds left, threw an incompletion to Antonio Brown that drew not just 1 but 2 personal fouls. Brown was never the same or sane after that hit, but it set up the Steelers with a chip shot field goal to break the Bengals' hearts. Now, I covered this hit in depth in my Antonio Brown episode, but his injury is probably a key reason the Broncos advanced in the playoffs. One day later, the Packers erased an 11-point deficit against the Skins, who did not like that when Eddie, I have yet to discover 5 guys, Lacey, closed the door on their Cinderella season. We also had a classic heartbreaking finish in Minnesota. The Vikes were all set to kick a game winner in a frigid game against Seattle, but Blair Walsh...
And the kick is no good!
Oh God, Blair Walsh made Gary Anderson look like Adam Vinatieri when he missed a chip shot, which vaulted the Seahawks to the divisional round. Now, Seattle didn't last long against the Panthers, who they had defeated the year earlier. Seattle fell behind 31-0 in the second quarter. I'm sure Seahawks fans will find a way to blame Russell Wilson for that. They almost did the impossible, though, and came back, but the Panthers clawed out a hard-earned victory in front of their home fans, despite surrendering 24 straight points. Similarly, the Patriots survived a late comeback bid against the Chiefs, who finally lost after posting 11 straight victories. The Steelers headed to Mile High without Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown, but managed to build a late lead against the Broncos, who looked like they were headed for their 3rd one and done in 4 years. That all changed when corner Bradley Roby poked the ball away from Fitzgerald Toussaint. No Bell, no AB, a banged up Big Ben. Thank you, football gods. Peyton Manning, in one of the most athletic plays of his life, falls down, was not touched, Dave Damashek, got up and fired a strike to Emmanuel Sanders. The Broncos capped off a clutch drive with a C.J. Anderson touchdown, and they staved off the Steelers, who were not gone to Super Bowl. But the gem of the second round came on Saturday night in the desert. Needing a touchdown to force overtime, Aaron Rodgers unleashed 2 of the greatest throws in NFL history. No, that's not an exaggeration, and tied the ball game with a Hail Mary.
And Janis, does he make
stop it?
Oh, please!
What a catch!
That's insane!
The second time he had completed a Hail Mary in 2015. Pretty crazy considering he's not even Catholic. This one, however, was not a game winner.
No, it didn't flip. It didn't flip. It didn't flip.
Arizona got the ball and answered with a play later dubbed the Hail Larry. Fitzgerald got a game-winning pass from Carson Palmer, and the Cardinals won one of the most thrilling games of the decade. They had no such luck the following week. On the road in Carolina, the Panthers dabbed all over the Cards, forcing 6 turnovers from Carson Palmer. He goes full Delhomme +1 and sealing a trip to Super Bowl 50 with a 49-15 victory. Kind of a rare thing in the playoffs. Hours later, we had a much tighter race for the AFC. The Broncos hosted the New England fuckery Patriots in the AFC title game for the second time in 3 years. Tight end Owen Bumper Car Daniels scored a pair of touchdowns early. Von Miller notched 2.5 sacks and intercepted Brady by baiting him harder than Brady baited us into thinking he was actually retiring. And just like that, Brady wouldn't go away. He throws up a prayer to Rob Gronkowski to convert a huge 4th down in the final minute, then drew within 2 points on another toss to Gronk. Defense got Denver this far, and it would continue to be their crutch. With the game on the line, the Broncos defense never wavered, and Bradley Roby corralled a game-sealing interception on a 2-point conversion that sent the Broncos back to the Super Bowl. It was the best offense against the best defense in Santa Clara. Many believed the 50th Super Bowl would be a formality, a coronation for MVP Cam Newton and the 17-1 Panthers against a team that had barely scrapped their way through the playoffs. After all, defense never wins championships. That wasn't the case. Von Miller made that clear in the first quarter.
Ball is out in the end zone.
Von Miller was unstoppable, as was the rest of the Broncos pass rush. Von notched another 2.5 sacks against the player who was picked ahead of him in 2011. Derek Wolfe revealed on my podcast that right tackle Mike Rimmers for the Panthers had a tell for pass plays, which allowed he and Von Miller to feast. And Cam Newton, preserving his health for a more important game, refuses to go for the football here. The normally calm and collected Aqib Talib nearly ripped off Corey Brown's head at the 2-yard line. It's a win when a personal foul nets 1 yard on a play that already went for a first down. Safety TJ Ward intercepted a pass. CJ Anderson and Emmanuel Sanders kept the offense moving. Brandon McManus tickled the gooch, and with the Broncos hanging on to a 6-point lead in the fourth quarter, it was Von Miller time. Also, Jordan Norwood returned a punt 61 yards in this game, which is still the longest punt return in Super Bowl history. The Broncos had done it. A CJ Anderson touchdown plus a 2-pointer from Benny Fowler sealed the victory. That would be Peyton Manning's last pass ever. Von Miller was an easy pick for Super Bowl MVP, and Peyton Manning hoisted the Lombardi in his last ever game. Manning had done just enough to keep this team rolling. And like they had done all season long, the defense shut the door at the perfect time. It's literally the most clutch defense I've ever watched. And the league MVP, Superman, well, he would be ridiculed for leaving his post-game press conference early. And an utterly dominant defense that should be considered as one of the best all-time outlasted other teams with high-powered offensive attacks. Kicker Brandon McManus was perfect in the postseason, not missing a single field goal, and got this sweet shout out from the president.
We can't forget to mention the heart and soul of this team's offensive firepower, kicker Brandon McManus.
Not as sweet as the shout out I gave him, but still impressive.
Are you aware that you've made famous the term kicking it down the gooch?
I made it famous?
Yeah.
Head coach Gary Kubiak somehow navigated benching and unbenching a Hall of Fame injured QB perfectly in an age where offense is king. There may never again be a champion like the 2015 Broncos. So flawed, so unique, so beautiful. And Peyton Manning was about to drink a shit ton of Budweiser.
I want to go, hug my family. I'm going to drink a lot of Budweiser tonight, Tracy.
Boom! Thank you for watching the 2015 season recap. I've done the 2012 season and the 2008 season. Feel free to check out either of those episodes if you enjoyed this at all.